Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we have a very special guest with us today, Adil Rafai from Hello from the Magic Tavern.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. So for any of our listeners who might not know you or any of your shows, I guess why don't you tell us about yourself, what you do, how people might know you, and then maybe if you want to tell us how you got into tabletop gaming.
Absolutely. So yeah, again, my name is Adil Rafai. I am in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a improv performer, teacher, improv corporate trainer, and podcaster. As you mentioned, I do a podcast called Hello from the Magic Tavern, which is a improvised fantasy world show. A lot of people call us a D&D podcast, but we're really not. We play a version of D&D called Offices and Bosses, which is more akin to just playing employees in a regular 9-to-5 office.
That's pretty good.
But it's basically the conceit is that a guy falls into a magical portal behind a Burger King. He ends up in sort of a Narnia-esque world, and versus going on high adventure and defeating evil, he kind of sets up shop in a tavern and just interviews magical beings. So that's my friend Arnie. There's also two co-hosts he has. One is Usador the Wizard, played by my friend Matt, and I play Chunt the Shapeshifter, who's usually in the form of a badger.
There you go.
And I'll do one other quick plug. I have another podcast called Hey Riddle Riddle,
yes,
which is me and two co-hosts trying to solve riddles and puzzles and doing improvised scenes along the way.
Yeah. And I was telling you before we started recording that I actually listened to a bit of Hello from the Magic Tavern a couple of years ago, and I don't know, didn't really resonate with me. But
what a great sell for the podcast.
Well, that's not. No, it's a hugely popular podcast. I've heard great things about it. Just I don't know, it wasn't really what I was looking for at the time, but. Hey Riddle Riddle I love it. It is one of my highest recommendations of podcasts I can give at the moment.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
So that one is so much fun. This is going to be a weird little story, but I have family that lives in Chicago, and one of them told me that a while ago that he worked with one of the people from Hello from the Magic Tavern. And around when I started trying to contact the Hey Riddle Riddle hosts, you guys trying to see if any of you wanted to be on this show, I was hoping, because I wasn't sure who my brother-in-law was talking about. I was hoping that it was going to turn out that it was you, because then that would be a good icebreaker for having you on the show. But then it turned out, no, it was Matt. So,
nice.
So instead of having a good icebreaker, I have a real bad icebreaker.
An ice maker.
Yes, exactly.
It's a deep freeze. Yeah.
Yes. So I just want to say, Hey Riddle Riddle is a lot of fun. I love listening to it. You guys have really gotten me to realize that most riddles are awful.
Yeah, I think it was funny in terms of when we first started, people were like, less improv and more riddles. Like, I'm listening to this because I want to solve riddles and puzzles.
Yeah.
And then after 2 or 3 episodes, people kind of got what the concept was, and they're like, no more riddles, just do improv scenes. So It's just funny that there's been a flip, and yeah, we've done 52 episodes so far, and boy, we are running out of riddles. So I think there's 10. I think there's been 10 good riddles in the history of mankind.
Yeah,
and we've done those 10, and now we are just seeing what else we can find.
Right. Oh goodness.
But that's the fun of it.
Yeah. Well, so thank you so much for being on the show again. Like for our listeners, please go and listen to Hello from the Magic Tavern and Hey Riddle Riddle. They're great. So check those out, and we're super excited to have you on the show. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thanks for noticing that I was here. No, I'm doing all right. I got a D&D session coming up where I'm going to be the DM, I don't do DMing, so I'm kind of nervous, but also very excited because I think I'm getting to the end of my like I don't want to play. I don't want to be a player anymore.
Oh yeah.
Like I've gotten a lot of really bad player habits that I can't seem to shake. So I'm like, what? I need to switch it up, DM for a while, and maybe that'll kind of level me out as a player. so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I'm currently off of work this week, so I'm trying to find ways to use this week as best as possible. I'm going to try to get some of our Patreon stuff done this month. Like I need to write some of my fiction. I'm going to try to do our Roll20 game this week. So for our listeners, we said back in January that we were going to start a couple other podcasts because I was on break in January too. And that blew up in my face because I have been busier than I have ever been in my entire life for the last 6 months.
Sure.
And I'm going to try to get some of that stuff in order this week. So I guess stay tuned. Adel, I wanted to ask, how did you get into tabletop gaming? What sort of games have you played? What games are you playing currently, and so on?
So I got into D&D very late in life. My sort of mentor in improv was a gentleman named Jason Chin, who is also turned out to be one of my best friends and also my roommate for a period of time. So he was very much into all the role-playing games and everything. So I think when I was around, 26 or 27, he introduced me to my first game of D&D, and that was my first entree into tabletop gaming. I played, up until that point, I had played some amount of like Catan, or just like Battlestar Galactica or some sort of loose, board games. But that was my first sort of immersive tabletop role-playing game. That he DM'd. I'm trying to think. Since then, I've been a part of 2 campaigns. I'm currently in a campaign that's been going for about 3 years.
Oh wow, good job.
That's all improvisers, so that's been an absolute joy. But before that, I guess in high school and in grade school, not because of my parents or anything, but I think D&D was always viewed as like, there's always the whispering that it was like the devil's playground. So
sure.
I think there's that stigma lingering in my small town. Kiwani, USA. So I always just never got into it.
Yeah, that seems to be fairly common. Jeff and we met through D&D basically in high school, but I think it's great. I think it's great for bringing people together, and I would love to play with more improvisers, I guess, because I'm not super great at role playing. I'm not going to make any comments about Jeff, but I can imagine what sort of ways he would describe his ability to role play. But there have been a couple times where I have had the chance to play with people who have a lot of acting experience and such, and I don't know. It's definitely a different vibe.
Absolutely, yeah. I can't imagine at this point playing without improvisers. The game I currently play in has JPC from Hey Riddle Riddle. It also has a guy named TJ Jagodowski, who's considered the best improviser of all time.
Oh wow!
So it's just like it's not necessarily intimidating, but it's just like you almost become I myself almost become like a passive observer because I'm just so in awe of like the brains that are at play.
Sure.
But it's at this point I can't imagine being a part of a group that doesn't have improvisers in it.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else, or you want to go ahead and jump into this episode?
Let's jump into it.
All right. So I want the two of you to imagine that you are in a tavern.
I do this every week.
And a spooky individual in a cloak comes up.
Is this man in a cloak a pervert? That'll help me in terms of what I do next.
Well, roll me a d20.
Okay, that's a 13.
Okay. You think he is, in fact, a pervert, and what do you do?
I stand up, pull out a chair, and offer him to sit down.
Okay.
Invite him to my table.
He sits down.
And I say, "Are you selling anything, you pervert?"
Well, yes, I have this map, and it goes somewhere mysterious.
Ooh. How much for this mysterious map?
I will sell it to you for 5 gold pieces.
And is that a euphemism?
Yes.
Pass, I'm out.
It is if you want it to be.
All right. He gets scared. He tosses down the map and runs away. And you guys look down and you see that it is a map to the Dragon's Hoard.
Dang pervs always carrying around.
I feel like pervs always have the best stuff.
So, Adel, that should be an indication of what it is like to play with someone who is not an improviser.
Right, yeah, there you go.
I love the idea of playing a D&D game where every single time you start to speak, you're like, where was I going with this?
Right.
Yeah, no,
I draw my sword and boy, where was I going with this?
When I was editing last week's episode,
is that right?
I actually did have the thought to myself, wow, how many episodes in a row have I had a half-formed idea and then I outright stated that I didn't know where I was going with that? And I committed to myself that I would not do that anymore.
And here we are.
So I guess listeners join us next week.
At this point, it's just like it's a running gag, you know?
I guess, yeah. Okay, so Adel, you had an item for us to discuss in the Dragon's Hoard today, is that correct?
Yeah, so I came up with an item. Again, because I've only played 2 campaigns in my entire life, equaling, 3.5 years of play.
Sure.
I don't know if this is an existing item or if this is like going to be laughable, but what I came up with is an item called the Pilfering Prick.
Okay.
What it is it's a tiny dagger. It's a 1-inch blade. And what you can do is whoever is the owner of it, whoever has, their fingerprints on the handle, they can stab someone with it. And when they stab an enemy with it, doesn't have to be an enemy, but if they stab anyone with it or cut someone with the blade, they are able to have a chance to steal information that they would like from them. So this blade not only cuts the flesh, but it also cuts into memory or the soul.
Interesting.
So say you have you've captured someone who has information in terms of like where a villain might be residing somewhere in this world, but they're tight-lipped, they're not able to, they're not spilling the beans, as it were, and you have no other way to interrogate them or to draw information out of them. If you stab them with this knife or cut them with this knife, you have a 50-50 chance of drawing out that information. You would roll a d20. If it was a 10 per se, you would get a vague, blurry grasp on this information. If it were a natural 20, you'd get the outright information, as it were. If it were a 1 through 10, I think what would be fun is that you get something you were not expecting. So perhaps you get a traumatic memory from this person's childhood.
Sure.
Perhaps you get like a pain in your knee that you didn't have before that they had, and now you've taken it on. But I just thought it would be funny to just have a sort of 50-50 chance to be able to draw out information and possibly get stuck with some qualities that you were not looking to inherit. So it would be something you would not use daily.
Yeah.
But in a painted in a tight corner, you might be drawn to drastic measures. And that's a Pilfering Prick.
That's really interesting.
I could just imagine a stab happy rogue or something like that, like just kind of pricking everybody, and then they end up with like several personalities because they've taken all these like extra memories.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking, what if there was someone who, like, someone was dying and their loved ones had no way to, like, there was no way that they were going to be able to, they needed something to hang on to from this loved one that was going to die. And so one of them stabs the dying person with this prick in the hopes of taking some of their qualities.
Sure.
So that then they can, in some way, live on as that person.
Yeah, and again, it could be like a real roll of craps, where it could be just like you suddenly remember a book they read or something. You remember like a terrible time on the toilet you had.
Sure.
It's a real grab bag.
Yeah.
That one time they ate Thai and Taco Bell in the same day, and it's like, oh no.
Taco Bell.
There you go.
Oh no.
I think that's really cool, and I'm trying to think of like ways that it could be used both as the players and against the players. Maybe the players, they know someone that has like a secret that they don't want anybody to learn. Like the players have a secret, and then one of them gets kidnapped, and then the bad guys stab them with this dagger in hopes of getting that secret from them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think again the concept was, if you have an idea of what you want to draw out of them, that's one half of the coin. And then the other half of the coin is an absolute it could be anything from their history of time on this world, or any sort of like I said, like a physical flaw or something along those lines.
Sure. It reminds me of, there was or at least the bottom half of that coin reminds me of, in 3rd edition D&D, there was this book where you had information on playing as monster characters, like player characters that are monsters. And there was one of them where it was for illithid characters, like mind flayers, who like suck out people's brains. And one of the abilities that they got was a certain number of times throughout your lifetime, you could like suck out a creature's brain and gain an ability they had. In a way, it kind of reminds me of that. And kind of like what I was saying, also kind of like what Jeff was saying, I'm picturing like a character that has this dagger and has killed so many people with it or just stabbed so many people with it that at some point they have just become this like walking mass of personalities, and they don't know which one is them and which one is the things they've taken from other people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it becomes like United States of Terror or whatever that TV show was, where it's almost like bordering on a schizophrenic personality.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that. I didn't know what that was about, though.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
I think it was like Toni Collette playing someone who had like 8 people within her, and the personalities would come out at different times.
Interesting. But that kind of idea.
But I love the idea of being like, well, we can either get the combination to this safe, or I might be slightly afraid of ladders. Like, I think at the DM's discretion, it would be such a playful tool to deploy.
There's the show iZombie, where like a woman who becomes a zombie, and then she works at a morgue, and so she eats the brains of all the people at the morgue, but then she takes on the like personalities of the ones she eats.
Sure.
Oh, interesting.
Now here's a question, Adel. Does the original person still have that knowledge or trait?
Let's say they don't.
Okay. So it is you are literally stealing it from them.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's not like dipping into like a pensieve or something in the Harry Potter world where you can just see the memory and then you have it as well. It's you alleviate that from them, so they would no longer have that memory at all.
Okay, yeah, I really like that. I think that's
that
a
ailment
really cool,
or whatever that may. And it could also be, I mean, with that, if we go that route, I think that makes it more interesting in terms of if one of the people in your party has is poisoned or something, or has some sort of ailment, you can stab them to try and take on that burden. If you feel like you are better equipped you're a more sort of staunch, stout, better constitution, a race or whatever that is, that you'd be able to stab them to try and take away what ails them, and carry that burden yourself.
That's really
You're a real
interesting.
martyr.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this is just like a transfer of diseases and stuff. I don't know. It's just, like it was just like a dirty. Are you sure this isn't a dirty needle? Like what is?
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's what it is. What did I say? Yeah, it's a dirty needle.
It's like, oh crap.
Yeah. When you inject it, you have wild dreams and visions. Yeah, heroin, dirty needle.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think there's a lot of potential with that.
I accidentally bumped into Gabe, and now I have his sweet tooth for soda. Like,
oh no, that means I don't have it.
Aha.
Quick question, Adel, and there is a correct answer. What is the best soda?
Oh boy. I mean, I gotta be true to myself and say root beer.
Okay. I mean, root beer's pretty good.
What was the right answer?
The right answer is RC Cola.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's always the one that everybody dunks on.
Right.
But
yeah.
Unironically, I love RC Cola. It's my favorite.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't make 6 figures a year. Royal Crown Cola.
Ooh.
We can't all afford that.
Yeah. That's it. It's the expensive one.
Right. No. Not the Farmer Jack brand or whatever.
Oh, yeah. AC Cola, America's Choice. We called it Armor Class Cola back when I was a kid. A kid, I mean, when I was 20 years old.
I was going to say, like, wasn't that long ago.
Do you guys have anything else for this one? I'm sorry, what was it called again?
The pilfering
prick. Okay. I was going to say the penetrating prick, and that's something's a bit different.
That sounds like something else entirely.
Yes. All right, so that was the pilfering prick from Adel. Thank you so much, Adel. That'll do it for the Dragon's Hoard. Jeff, if anybody wanted to submit Dragon's Hoard items for us, or stories for the funeral pyre, or questions for us to discuss, how would they get those to us?
Or intros for the Dragon Horde.
Or intros for the Dragon's Horde. Please submit some intros for the Dragon's Horde.
Yeah, we'll use those for sure.
Well, actually, here's the thing. We do have a couple intros that people have submitted, but oftentimes when somebody submits an intro, they also submit an item that goes along with it.
Oh, sure. In this case, yeah.
Usually when I am getting stuff together for an episode, like even when it's just the two of us, I usually have like an idea of what sort of stuff we're going to talk about, and I try to keep everything along a theme, kind of. And so it doesn't always, I can't always use the Dragon's Horde intros just immediately. I sometimes have to wait for like the perfect episode.
Sure.
So anyway, but yes, please submit us some generic Dragon's Horde intros.
Right.
That would be great.
And you can do that by emailing us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com.
There you go. You can also submit them on our Discord.
Right, on our Interparty Discord, and then there's what, bit.ly/
/Interparty Discord.
Yeah, okay.
No punctuation, no capitals.
Or you can submit them on Twitter and use the hashtag Here Comes the Pervert.
Oh no.
I guess that works too. Question mark.
I don't want to see that trending.
So Adel, do you want to tell our listeners once again about your stuff, where they can find you, anything else you've got going on?
Yeah, so they can find me on Twitter at Adalrify, on Instagram at Adalrify. That's ADALRIF as in Frank AI. Again, I do the podcast Hello from the Magic Tavern and Hey Riddle Riddle.
Cool. I do want to tell everybody that our show is brought to you by our wonderful patrons. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. We've got some cool stuff on there for patrons. We've got outtakes. We have fantasy fiction that I write every month. We have a monthly bonus podcast. We've got a Roll20 game that's going to be going on this week. So actually, by the time this episode goes out, it will have already passed. We'll also, if you're the top tier, I will write about your character for our monthly fantasy fiction.
Ooh, very cool. That's a lot of cool stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Do you mind if I mention for Hey Riddle Riddle, we also have a Patreon?
Yeah, go for it.
Patreon, if you want to join that.
Sure.
It's patreon.com/Hey Riddle Riddle. So if you enjoy the show, we do bonus episodes every Friday. So it's about 4 extra episodes a month if you want to check that out.
There you go. And again, I can say that Hey Riddle Riddle is one of my favorite podcasts right now. Mm-hmm. So they've got some great content.
Thank you.
So check them out. And then let me briefly mention the other podcasts on our network. Check out Crit Academy, critacademy.com. Justin, Ian, and Brandon create new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. They've written a few books on DM's Guild as well, so go check those out. Also, D&D Character Lab, Garen and Dan make characters every week, pit them against each other, and debate whose character is better. And Brute Force and Ignorance is an actual play podcast. They just started a new storyline, so go check them out. Great stuff all around. Let's go ahead and get into some questions.
I was going to say I just started listening to their new storyline.
Oh, awesome! I actually haven't started listening to that just yet. I've been, because I knew this break was coming up. I kind of wanted to build up a bank of stuff to start listening to once the break was over.
I think it was Dan who's playing Kenku.
Okay.
And he's definitely he's doing he's writing down everybody's phrases and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Really
I hope he got that from us, because I think we've mentioned
maybe they do reference us a bunch. And I'm like it's so weird listening to somebody reference reference us and what are you doing?
Yeah. Adel, I don't know if you're familiar with the Kenku race.
I'm not.
They're like a race of bird people, but one of their whole things is that they can't speak. They can only mimic sounds they've heard.
Ooh.
And we did a Roll20 game with that. Jeff was actually running. He did run a short little thing for that. And I was playing a Kenku, and my whole thing was every time someone would speak in character, I would write down what they said, and then everything I would say would be quotes from other people, and I would try to mimic their voices whenever I could.
Yeah.
So
That's cool, but also kind of nightmarish.
Kind of.
It's a very challenging race to play as a player, but it's so funny.
It makes me think of Vincent D'Onofrio in Men in Black, where give me sugar in water. It's almost speak and spell style. I'm cobbling together words I've heard.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I don't think
cool.
I don't think I could have done it long term, but it was fun for a little one off. Okay, you want to get into some questions, Jeff?
Sure. Our first question comes from Happy Gilmore on email, and they ask, do you know of anyone who has taken improv classes to improve their DMing? If so, was it worth it?
Yes, and this is probably a pretty good question for Adel to take point on. And Adel, if I recall, you are not a DM, so if you want to, however you want to reword this question to fit yourself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I think the way I'm going to interpret it is improv is taking an improv class good for D&D play, and I would say, oh, hell's to yeah.
Yes.
I think again, like I mentioned, playing with improvisers, I feel is such it weaves such a rich tapestry where each character has such a deep well of sense of self. And such a rich backstory, and it's all stuff where it's kind of, as the DM kind of moves the pieces on the board and sort of navigates our group or surrounds us with obstacles, I feel like it's on the fly. So it's not anything that we kind of conjure at home and then bring in. It's all just as we play that we're able to dip into that well of made up knowledge. So yeah, I would highly recommend an improv class for anyone who's very much into D&D or looking to start D&D, because I think it's such a wonderful skill set to have, to just be able to think on your feet and conjure up whatever ideas you have. And I think it also leads to using items in interesting ways and using each other's strengths and weaknesses in interesting ways. And also, the D&D party I'm a part of right now, the campaign I've been in for 3 years now, it's basically what I look forward to most every week. So we play every Saturday for about 3 hours, and it's, most sessions I cry laughing. So it's, it also adds such a wonderful levity to everything we do in terms of not making it overly serious.
Yeah. When I first started DMing, it was a long time ago. It was like, I'd only been playing the game for maybe a year. And I started DMing out of necessity because the group I was in stopped returning my calls. And then it's like, well, I want to keep playing. So I introduced my other friends to it and everything. And for a long time, I was a very, very bad DM because I was as inflexible as you can get. I did not know how to react when a player wanted to do something that I didn't explicitly prepare for. Yeah. Pretty much every time someone would be like, oh, well, I'm going to try this thing. Even if this thing was completely reasonable, I would just be like, nope, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That thug that someone gave $20 to kill you for, nope, he's willing to die to hide the identity of the person who paid him $20. Just because that's not what I had planned. So just doesn't work. Sorry. And it can't be overstated how important it is to get out of that mindset.
Yeah.
Once I started playing with players that not necessarily were like actors or anything, but just were better at improvising. Once I started playing with those types of players, it opened my mind, and I was like, suddenly I was able to say yes. When the players wanted to do something that I didn't plan for, I would say yes. And then I would think, okay, well, what would happen? Maybe I would think to myself, how could I do what they want, but also keep a little bit of mystery? Maybe depending on the situation. But it's no fun when everything fails just because the DM didn't plan for it.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sounds like that's one of my fears for the session I got coming up is like, I was like, I want to be as open as possible. So like, I'm going to try my best to say yes, but I don't know how well that's going to go. Like I might have to be like, give me like 10 minutes and I'll come up with something.
Sure.
You guys both DM different campaigns?
Well, so, I actually haven't had a game going in some time, but for many years, like I was the DM of whenever we would play.
Yeah.
So far, Jeff has really only DM'd like that one little thing we did on Roll20, but he's planning on playing a game coming up, or planning on DMing a game coming up.
Very cool. Yeah. The DM for my campaign is a guy named Rush Howell, who's one of the most brilliant minds I've ever come across, and he's a lawyer in real life, but
wow.
He's also just like one of the most talented improvisers that's ever come through Chicago. But he did something recently. I mean, he's so good at whatever we come up with, he just rolls with, and he just kind of if we want to do it, as long as we justify how it works or why it would work, he'll allow it to happen. And he did something recently that really tickled me, which was we were walking in like a desert and we came across I think it was like a giant snake who seemed to wish us no harm, no ill will. And in front of the snake was like a glowing chest, like a chest where there was like light seeping out of the cracks. Ooh. And the snake, as we approached, said something about, you can ask me 2 questions about the chest, or you can attempt to open it. Or it was this longer spiel that he went into, Rush playing the snake himself. And after the snake had kind of finished putting forward the options, we just said basically like, we're all good, and just kept walking. And it was something where he like laughed to himself and then was like, great, like you keep going and that's that. Like instead of being like, no, the walls, like suddenly walls spring up and you're trapped, and he was just like, yeah, no worries. Like, why would you, if you're unsure of what's in that chest and you don't trust the snake, like why would you stop? So right. It was such a eye-opening moment to me of like a DM just being like, yeah, that was a blip on the radar. We didn't choose to follow it, but there's, it's like the Robert Frost theory of like, two paths in a road diverge, and you can take either one versus sort of a off rails versus on rails approach, which I really, really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to say that whatever he had planned for the chest or whatever, he can't like take pieces of that and use it elsewhere.
Of course.
That sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, and that might be a creature that keeps popping up along the way. Like maybe he'll start to haunt us until we eventually do open it,
Like
but
the snake follows you. He's like, wait, come back. It was really cool.
I'm just a traveling salesman. Please, I got these knives. But I just like the idea of to me, such a big part of improv that's not really talked about. I talk about it in my teachings, but not a lot of my teachers told it to me when I was taking improv classes. So much of improv is sacrifice, where it's you come up with this wonderful, brilliant idea. Somebody else says something to where that idea doesn't make sense to say anymore, and you just let it go. So I feel like Rush, being an expert improviser, brings that to the game, where it's just like, I have an idea of what might happen, but if we don't play into that, or if we're not interested, he can immediately shift and be malleable to our interests and where our group feels we should head, versus trying to force us into situations where it's like we're stuck in an abattoir leading towards a certain fight or anything. So I really appreciate that idea of sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think that seems like key to DMing.
Yeah.
It like is to just let it go. If the players aren't interested, just let it go.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gonna put them on that railroad and they're gonna notice it, and it's not gonna be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And really, like, sacrifice is kind of the idea behind yes and, which is I don't really have any authority to say this, but I feel like it is almost like the basis of improv, kind of.
Huh, so sorry to stop you. Can I see your improv badge?
Excuse me, Gabe.
Yeah, you have no authority to say that.
What are your credentials?
Just because, even in a scene, like I've taken a little bit of improv classes, but I'm not good at it. So in a scene, when you might have an idea of how you want the scene to go, but if someone else says something that it goes off in a different direction, the worst thing you can do is say, no, we're going to go with what I was going to do instead.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Gabe, well, I saw a show of Second City once, and I thought about what I would say if they called me up and they didn't. So there.
Show me on the doll where Second City hurt you, Jeff. That's
how I approach movies. Whenever I see a movie, I'm like, if one of the characters were to step out of the screen and pull me into the movie, here's what I'd do. Purple Rose of Cairo style.
Well, I mean, we're joking, but I think a lot of people do that when watching fiction. They're like, what would I do in this situation?
Right,
like, no, don't go through that door.
Right.
Go this other way.
That's fair.
Yeah. We had some guests on quite a while ago, and the topic of improv came up. It was back when we had the Hardy Dice Friends on a couple, like maybe 2 years ago almost.
Oh, goodness.
And they, at some point in there, I had sort of been under the presupposition, and I think this question is even asked under the same kind of idea, that being a DM is really where the improv has to be. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like a good player should be improvising quite a bit as well. Now, I think the argument is that as a player, you are mostly reacting to what the DM tells you. But whenever I had played with like really good players, I feel like the players are suggesting stuff. They are introducing stuff. They are bringing things out of the game world that might not have even been there in the first place. So I think that for a player, improvising is also very, very important. And I really think taking improv classes could probably benefit all players of tabletop role-playing games.
Absolutely. Yeah, the way I think about it is that as a player in a RPG, is that if you use improv to sort of set filters for your character, that's going to help dictate how you respond to any given circumstance or conversation or whatever that might be. In terms of if I'm playing a wood elf who's like, I believe myself to be very optimistic, and I always see the sort of optimistic approach. The idea of if somebody says like, hey, your pet dog died, right? It's the idea of c'est la vie. I had a good run with him, so it goes, whatever that is, right? Not saying that anytime anyone dies or I lose anything that I'm going to be fine about it, but just the idea of you have these filters in place that help dictate how you react and respond, versus just the idea of every single interaction being a new raw set of nerves or emotions where anything might tumble forth.
Sure.
Our next question comes from Peter K. on email. What are some unwritten customs that you have had in your gaming groups?
Yes. And I will say that when Peter K. submitted this, he did submit a couple examples of ones from his group. Mm-hmm. So we can get to those if we need to. But I guess, do either of you have any that come to mind?
Our unwritten custom is that we tend to... we're since we're all improvisers or comedians, we tend to have a lot of puns in our game.
Okay.
So we have a lot of runs where something gets said, or we hear the name of like an inn or a tavern or something, and then we just riff on it for like 5 minutes until we feel like it's peaked, and then we move on.
Sure.
So that's kind of an unwritten rule, is that we're always going to have fun brainstorming the best sort of pun. We also have sort of an unwritten rule where we have two magic users in our group, and anytime they use magic to defeat an enemy, it's unsaid or it's not sort of written down that this has to be the case. But in the past 3 years, what happens is they're always going to turn our enemy into a dog, and then we bury them. So I think that was started by JPC, where it's just like one time he defeated someone with whatever spell, magic missile or whatever, and then he transfigured or transmorphed their body into a dog, and then we buried the dog, knowing that it would turn back into a human in an hour or something. But it's now become custom that anytime we defeat someone, we turn him into a dog and then bury him.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I mean, that's a pretty good one, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's so funny, and it's just become it's just status quo now. So it's just like we don't even make a big deal out of it. It just happens.
Like you're walking down the road and like you see a murder happen, and then they just kind of run off and leave the body there, and you're like, wait, they didn't even turn it into a dog.
Yeah.
What kind of savage are they?
How gauche.
Right.
But it's also been funny a few times where it's like we're burying a dead dog who is like some orc or something, and then like a village person will walk by and it's like, oh god, we didn't kill this dog. You gotta believe me. And the villager will run off to be like, you cruel punishment,
Yeah,
but
animal abusers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's kind of a good idea if you want to hide the fact that you killed someone. Just make it a dog, and fewer people will be concerned.
But then I imagine you bury a dog, and then the spell wears off, and it turns it back into like a human-sized thing. It like displaces the earth that you've buried it in.
Yeah. So like, it's already buried. It's done. Who cares?
We had so my character in this campaign is a wood elf ranger named Angelo Manolo, nice Italian elf. And my thing is that my character I describe as like Little Nicky meets Violet from The Incredibles.
Oh, okay.
So like really socially awkward, really shy, but unbelievable with a bow and arrow. So his thing is that anytime he defeats someone, he takes their eyes. So he has this bag of eyes on his belt.
Wow.
Clearly, most of those eyes have just turned into like straight up goo because eyes don't keep.
Right.
Which I find really fun. But he has a thing where whenever he goes somewhere, if something turns into like a bet, he'll set one of the eyeballs down on like a shelf or on a tree or something, walk 100 yards, and then bet the person he can't hit the eye right in the center. So that's become like sort of a fun, just like a sort of a fun rule in this world, is that I'm always going to have an eye to challenge somebody with, and most of the time whoever I'm challenging is disgusted by the eye and immediately gives forth whatever information we were looking for.
Right.
Yeah,
they're just sort of off, put off by it so much. Like, yeah, you know what? Don't worry about the eye.
I'll just. Oh, yeah. I'm I'm always looking for an animal companion, and it never works out. And recently, the displaced dirt where the dog was reminded me of this, where Rush, our DM, had a thing where we came across a giant's house, and in the giant's yard there was a cage with two wolves in a pen, kind of stalking around, and I wanted to befriend the wolves, but we had to get them out of the pen for me to kind of get them to trust me. So JPC, as a magician, or as a wizard, turned one of the wolves into a mouse, so it could slip between the bars, and we could turn it back in and then gain its trust. But as soon as he turned it into a mouse, the other wolf ate it. And so we sat there for a while trying to figure out what to do next. And then all of a sudden, Rush had the Rush had it where the mouse turned back into a wolf and exploded the other wolf.
Oh no.
That's
So then lying in this cage was a dead wolf who had been chewed to death, and then another wolf who had been exploded from the inside out. And
Oh no.
I think we were just laugh crying for about 10 minutes on that move.
yeah.
Sweet. I'm gonna get a new dog.
Yeah. But it's every time I get an animal companion, it dies or it runs away on its own volition, or it's just been a fool's errand so far. But it's kind of become. I'd kind of be disappointed at this point if I do find a connection with an animal.
Sure. Could you imagine being the investigator that comes across that cage?
Yeah.
It's like one of those riddles where it's like there's a puddle of water on the floor and somebody's been stabbed to death.
Yep,
It's like,
yep.
oh, it was an ice pick. Or
Gary Duncan, animal detective. Clearly, one of these wolves was turned into a mouse, ingested, and then exploded outward. I guess I should have said pet detective, but that's already a thing.
Right. Sure. The tracks on the floor indicate that this was a wolf that was, polymorphed into a mouse.
I'm picturing Humperdinck from The Princess Bride, like jumping back and forth in the sand, like mimicking the motion.
A great
of
battle was fought
fight.
here.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the question about unwritten customs and such. Just one thing with Adel, you were saying that you guys, whenever like a pun comes up, you guys spend 5 minutes just kind of coming up with the perfect, jokes and whatever with the puns. I think that's great as long as everybody in the group is on board.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if one person in our group was like rolling their eyes, we would stop. But everyone's so game to just be like, let's really deep dive into this. So it becomes a pleasurable experience. But yeah, don't be, if nobody else in your group is into that, don't be the person who does that.
Exactly.
I love puns, but I'm afforded, I'm lucky enough to have the people I'm surrounded with enjoy me doing them, I believe. So
I would hope, yeah.
Yeah.
They either like the puns or they like you a lot.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, we'll let them do this.
We'll let it slide.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some sort of unwritten customs that we've had. I know that just things that I personally do, not necessarily things that are part of like the group, is I'm always trying to be as much of a team player as possible. I always try to do what I can, like especially with new players present. I do whatever I can to get the group together and get everything moving, because I know as a DM it is frustrating when the party just will not be in the same room together. They keep finding other things for their characters to do that make it difficult to just get things moving.
Yeah.
So I always try to do that myself. I always try to bring something to drink or like snacks or whatever if I can. I don't know. I feel like it's not necessarily like a rule, but we would often either bring snacks or try to make arrangements for like pizza or something.
Sure. Yeah. Just different little pregame ritual sort of things.
Yeah.
What were some of what was it? Peter's suggestions?
Oh yeah. So Peter K, when he submitted this, he had a few. He said if there is a total new player in the group, the DM buys that player a dice set.
Oh,
which I think is actually really cool.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I have a lot of dice, so I'm always I guess that's another thing about me. I'm always willing to let people just, hey, you need to use some dice here. I've got like 30 times as many dice as I need.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. I don't know if I would ever do that unless I felt like the player would be there for more than one session.
Sure.
I just feel like, there have been too many times where somebody plays once or twice and then doesn't play anymore.
Well, isn't most of your dice from people who were just first time player, bought a set of dice and then
and
just
then
left it at your house?
Yes, that is the case.
Never saw them again.
It hasn't happened in a while.
It's like New Year's resolution of like getting a gym membership, working out for 2 weeks, and then being like, nah, I'm lazy.
Exactly.
Yep. Oh man.
And then another one that Peter said is that generally speaking, the DM should be the host. And the more I think about that, it's not necessarily something that I would call a rule, but it seems to just about always be the case.
Mm-hmm. I figure the DM is going to be the one who's got like most of the books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also if they're putting in the work and the effort and the energy and the time, that the least you can do is like Uber to their place versus making them go somewhere else.
Sure.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like when you're hosting a party at your house, you might have to, you end up doing some of the work too, because you got to like set up the table and chairs or something like that.
Yeah,
but
that's fair. I'm lucky enough that Rush, the guy who DMs our game, is he has a penthouse condo on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So he's a millionaire to some degree. So he has a beautiful place whereas the rest of us live in squalor. So it's it's become a very nice thing where we can just like enjoy the beautiful cityscapes from his penthouse as we play. So I think he realizes he probably has the nicest place.
I played with a player a long time ago he was an investment banker, and we didn't play at his place, but like he would always, like when we first started playing, he bought a set of the books for himself and a set of the books just for the group to use. Oh, wow. He would always spring for pizza. He would refuse if anybody like offered to pay for it. So that is always nice.
Sounds like a power move.
Yeah, maybe he was actually the one that butted heads with the DM all the time.
Like, I have to keep myself from doing stuff like that because like anytime I got any sort of like savings going, I'm like, I'm doing all right now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna spend it on all my friends and then just be like, shoot, where did all it go?
Ooh, can I ask you guys? This is not really a on point, but a bit of a lateral move. Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
We just bought, as a gift for our DM, we just bought him a dice tower.
Okay.
And so we've only used it once or twice. What are your guys' thoughts on dice towers? Because we're using it, but we're also like, I think it's just easier to roll.
Yeah.
But do you find, I don't know what the purpose of those are.
I personally think they are purely decorative. Like they're, or at least in the groups I've been in, they would be purely decorative. If you are in a group that is concerned about players cheating,
that's
which some groups are, then a dice tower is great because everybody rolls in the same spot. Everybody knows that's what's rolled because it's right there in front of you. Beyond that, like if I'm going to roll, I'd rather just roll in front of myself.
It was at first, it was like a fun novelty of like, listen to that clank.
Right.
And then after like half a session, I think it was just like, cool, well, let's put that away. But I know so many people, it's become a popular thing, but I think it just is kind of superfluous.
I feel like it's not something that you necessarily need to be using all the time. Like maybe for newer players, just to kind of make it so like something that they can focus on, I guess. Like it's like, okay, you got to roll your dice. Here you go. I don't.
Or if you're playing with those dummies who don't know how to roll a dice, they just
oh my goodness,
I
do know people like that.
That is sort of a thing. Or they're just dice habits. Some dice habits are really weird, and like one of the people I play with, like before they even like explain what they want to do, they're already like juggling it in their hand.
Yeah,
and they will keep going and going and going. Like they'll be juggling it in their hand for about 5 full minutes while they're sort of slowly explaining what they want to do, and it's just like, just roll their dice.
Right.
I've also seen people who roll dice as if they're skipping a stone across a lake.
Oh my goodness, I know.
It's like every game we lose 20 dice. Where it's like, would you not strong arm them onto the table? Like,
right.
Yes. Yeah. So a way to control bad dice habits. Or
a way to be like, passive aggressive about bad dice habits.
Yeah. Or have it to be like a special occasion, like like certain types of rolls, or like if it's like a very dramatic moment or something like that. You as the DM, you could pull out the dice tower and be like, all right, you guys are like, you're. I'm trying to think of like a dramatic example or something like that. But like, I don't know, like the during the final battle, if like
the dragon smashes through the door and
like roll for initiative in the tower or something like that for the final battle. I don't know, something that's going to have a little bit more drama to it. Yeah, exactly.
I recently got a 3D printer, so I have printed a whole bunch of dice towers.
Ooh, that's
because. Awesome. Some of them look really cool. I made one that is, I didn't design it, of course, but it's a little haunted house. And it's actually designed for the game Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Oh, man. Yeah, I love that game.
And so it's got a little balcony that is the perfect size for the 8 dice that game uses.
That is fantastic. I love that.
So that's really cool for that. There's also another one I printed that is, it's a dice tower that clips onto a DM screen. Now, I don't personally use a DM screen at the moment, but if I ever do, you can hang it on the DM screen either on your side or on the player's side. And then if you want the players to see what you're rolling, just roll it, drop it into there.
That's maybe if all the players are not sitting next to the DM because the DM is like weird or smells. You can coax them to sit closer.
Was that a personal attack?
You smell through the microphone.
Yeah.
You always smell like a campfire.
So I think the dice towers, I don't really think they are necessary, but they can look cool. And, some people want them for various reasons. So
Yeah.
I would never turn one down, but
yeah, absolutely. I guess it also helps probably with like randomization to a better degree. Like you're saying, sometimes when people roll, they lay it down and it's like that didn't get much of a spin. So I guess the dice tower is sort of a best case scenario in terms of really tumbling the dice.
Yeah, like I think I have a weird thing with people who don't like get a good full roll in. I'm like, no, like people who get bad rolls a lot, and I'm like, it's because you're not actually rolling it, even though I'm pretty sure like statistically,
it's all statistics, unless they are positioning it in a specific way in their hand before.
Every single time, like that. Because like I remember back in the day, Steve used to just kind of drop it.
Yeah,
and I'd be like. And like he wouldn't a lot of times he wouldn't roll really well, and he'd be really upset about it. Like, well, but maybe if you actually rolled it, maybe it would I don't know, it might land on something better.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally feel like that's more of a superstition.
Right, exactly. It most definitely is, but it feels better.
Sure. And then just one more from Peter K, which I sort of mentioned earlier. He said, if you're not the host or the DM, then you bring snacks. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable rule for everybody to abide by. Yeah. Really, anytime I'm going to be at somebody else's house, if I can, if it's a food related gathering, like I'll try to bring at least like a few bottles of pop or something. If it's like a board game night, I make sure to bring board games, that sort of stuff.
I make sure and always bring either a candle or clothes that no longer fit me.
What? just to kind of give it away to people. It's
just like, to unload the items in my house I no longer want.
There you go. Because you started that with a candle, I thought, is this some sort of weird ritual?
Yeah.
Oh goodness!
You light the candle, you lay out the clothes that no longer fit.
Clothes.
All right. Do you guys have anything else for this one?
Nope. Thank you to Peter K for sending in those questions. And
suggestions. Thank you very much, Peter K.
Our next question comes from Stiltskin Kupo 84 on Discord. What is your favorite race to play as? Any race from D&D or Pathfinders and so on, and why? Yeah.
So, Adel, when you play a game, what are your favorite races to play as?
So far, like I said, I've only been in 2 campaigns, and both times I've played a wood elf. So I definitely like having a bow and arrow. I definitely like being a distance striker, or whatever you like. What's the best way to articulate that? Is being someone with range.
Yeah, it's a range character.
Yeah. So that's the only thing I know. Do you guys have recommendations? If I were to play in another game or start a second game, do you have any suggestions in terms of, is there anything where you can like ride a lion or like?
Well, I mean, yes, but it wouldn't be race based. It would probably be more class based.
Gotcha.
Wow, when you say it like that, it really sounds like sounds like something a bit more.
I just realized that I'm like, is there any race that like rides a lion? It's like, well, anyone can ride a lion, and also no one can.
Well, actually, on that like, anything that's small size, so like gnomes and halflings have an easier time finding things that they can ride. So they can ride riding dogs and things like that. So
I think if I were to play again, not joking, I think I would play a Kanku. Okay. Because I feel like that would be so much fun to just like almost speak in like threats or something, where it's just like
use their own words against them.
Use their own words, but try and like differ up the cadence to where you think you're being kind, where it's like you gesture towards for someone to sit down, and you're like, "I'm going to kill you." Right. So it's all like intent, but not the actual words. I feel like that would be so interesting to try and finagle to cobble together that language.
Sure. Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. I tend to almost exclusively just play humans. Boo. Because I know they're
the
boring,
worst race.
but it's easiest for me to get into character when I'm playing a human. I would rather play a human with an interesting backstory and an interesting goal than to play, I don't know how an elf is going to think. Elves have lived, 100 years or whatever.
So to you, the most interesting backstory is like, my name's Mark and I'm from Baltimore. I'm in sales.
I'm an investment banker.
But also, humans there really is, there's no downside. They're not necessarily great at anything, but they're just well balanced. They can fit into any role. So that's the one I always tend to play as.
So
try to
humans
stay-
are perfect, no flaws.
Well,
See, I used to play humans all the time just because they got the bonus feat in
Yeah,
third
that's
edition, and they
definitely
get
true.
the variant gets it in fifth edition. So
Yep.
it's like it's really easy to just play a human because you get that extra little, ability or whatever.
Oh, that's
So, but I did that so much in third edition that I'm like, nope, never doing. I'm just staying away from humans. I don't like them anymore.
but I think I know what Jeff's favorite race to play is.
You know, you don't. You don't
Okay,
know
okay.
me. Well, I mean, I really do like playing. I have a few, and I
Yeah.
do like playing Warforged, which is from
Okay.
the Eberron campaign setting, which they're robots. We'll just,
I can get into an argument about how they're not robots,
no.
but for your purposes, yes, they are robots.
right. Yes, they are not actually robots. We've been through this.
Yes.
I agree with you, but it's for just as in layman's terms, like they're like the robots of the D&D
Sure,
world.
sure.
I'm
And,
excited to at some point. I was lucky enough to go to like Wizards of the Coast, like the main office, I guess. And a guy named Greg Tito showed us around and gave us a bunch of swag in terms of like books and all this stuff. So I have 4 or 5 books that I'm dying to like spend a weekend. I should just like rent a cabin and spend a weekend
Sure.
just perusing pages, because I still know so little about what's possible. Like,
Yeah.
again, like what races or what types, so I have such a huge blind spot in that regard. So I'm dying to just sort of sift through a book and figure out what all the different races are and all the different options are, because it seems so customizable and so like there's so many interesting things out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as like the longer an edition lives on, the more and more options that they publish and people have made through like homebrewing and stuff like that, and people try to carry over stuff from older editions to newer editions. So there's tons and tons of options to find.
Are there demons? Can you play like a demon or something?
In
Well,
some ways, yeah.
I mean, in the player's handbook, there is the tiefling, which they are like as they're written in the book, they are basically demon people. They're like people who somewhere in their bloodline, somebody made a deal with a demon, and as such, now all their descendants are
And now they can play the guitar like Robert Johnson.
sure.
I basically want to play Beetlejuice in a campaign.
Okay,
Can I do
mean,
that?
that would be real interesting.
My other favorite races are like things like I play the races that are easy for me to play because I'm bad at role playing. So I play like orcs and
Yeah.
like
Goliaths
and like stuff, things that are like they're usually like brutish or they're not as like civilized, so I can play off the I can just kind of like grunt and point if I'm really if I'm feeling if I'm not feeling it, or the Warforged, which are just robots. I'm like I could play a robot because
I gotta play one of those
robotic in my
robots.
personality.
Because Jeff is actually a robot.
There was a long running gag that I guess is still running that I am indeed a robot.
There was a Facebook group that one of our friends made called "I think one of my friends is a robot and it scares me."
Yeah.
And it was a picture of Jeff, and half of his face was like a Terminator.
Yeah, somebody like MS painted him.
MS paint,
yeah,
yes.
like a Terminator face.
Gabe,
on
why
it or
does
something.
Jeff keep getting freaked out whenever I get water near him?
No, my circuits.
Oh, I guess you know what? I just realized that I did play a halfling bard in the Hey Riddle Riddle Patreon. We did a 4-episode D&D arc with Rush Howell as our DM, and in that I played a halfling bard named Duke Lukulele.
Oh,
So I guess
wow.
I've
really
played.
good.
I've at one time for 4 hours played a halfling bard.
Okay.
Halfling and Bard are actually like at least in 5th edition.
They're real good
they're
options.
really good. Like I've played. I played a halfling Bard before, and it's a lot of fun.
Was that your little old lady that made cookies to give to people?
Yep. I flavored it instead of songs. She baked.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Like that's how she gave everybody inspiration.
For whatever reason, the way you said halfling bard made me immediately think of the song "Uptown Girl" by Billy Joel. So now I'm every time I hear Uptown Girl, I'm just going to replace Uptown Girl with halfling bard.
There you
Halfling
go.
Bard. Yeah, gotcha.
All right. Yeah. Not much else to this question.
Yeah, just sort of.
I know I'm boring. I just like to play humans. I think that I like having a blank slate, and then I can go in whatever direction I want.
You're just there for the free feat.
I mean, that's part of it. That's part of it. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for this week, but we do still have our social media discussion questions. Last week's social media discussion question was, have you ever played out a festival or party in game? How did it go?
Yeah.
What'd you say, Jeff?
Oh, well, I just remember there was the water festival.
Flood festival.
Flood festival in the Shackled City campaign, which I've played that
Played several times.
Yeah, played that adventure several times.
Various circumstances.
You just never can finish the dang thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like a festival that goes on there during like a rainy season or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Adel, when I ran this for Jeff and some of our friends a couple of years ago, and I had a whole lot of time at work where I was just sitting there doing nothing. So I planned out a whole bunch of like activities for them at this festival. And one of the things I did was I recorded a very short set as a comedian. Like I wrote out a bunch of jokes that involved stuff that I was going to have happen at the festival.
Yeah.
And I recorded it and then I played it for them with like laughter in the background.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty good. Yep.
Adel, have in your time playing, have there been any times where you guys played out a festival or a party?
To my recollection, we've had one so far, which was a giant named Malgor had a flying castle. He invited us to be his special guests at a party he was throwing. And so it was kind of different. It was almost like a variety show where there's just these different, like almost like a vaudeville act going on and a one-act play written by one of our characters. And so we got to see a little bit of it, but there was also kind of a heist going on. So it turned into almost like a noises off situation where there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Man.
So
That's
we
pretty
only caught a few glimpses of the party in full effect.
Okay, cool.
But it's very enjoyable.
Well, good. So we got a few responses from our listeners. Some of them are going to be kind of long, so I'm not going to read all of them. But over on Facebook, our good friend Bridget said, I started my last major campaign with a New Year's festival on the first day of spring. There were a bunch of games to introduce the newer players to mechanics like contested ability checks, uncontested ability checks, fighting, grappling, etc. I even had a secret contest where one NPC was given a shiny key, and whoever had the key at the end of the day won the contest. So the rogues had to identify, tail, and pickpocket this NPC. Then they ended up picking each other's pockets to get it. In the end, one of the players reverse pickpocketed the key into a stable hand boy's pocket. He was big and not very bright, but had a great heart, so she decided he deserved to win.
Oh.
I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah. I think I played in this campaign, but I actually missed out on this adventure. So,
Jeff,
yeah.
you missed it.
Yeah.
Nathan H. says, my summer one-shot started at a festival of the summer solstice. After the PCs interacted with fairgoers a bit, a magical storm decimated the whole festival, plunging the PCs into a survival adventure. I think that festivals are great for world building, and I would love to incorporate less cataclysmic festivals into my games more often. I think that's interesting, using the festival as a hook to make everything get real bad, rather than just a way to let them celebrate, you know.
Here's what I want. I want basically a D&D game that's basically Big Brother. Do you ever watch the TV show Big Brother, the reality show?
I know of it. I haven't watched it.
I just want that. It's just like 16 characters under one roof for 30 days. Every week someone gets voted out. I think that's going to be my next game.
Okay, so I just did a quick Google search for Big Brother RPG.
Uh-huh.
There is a website, rpgbigbrother.weebly.com.
No.
I don't know.
Is it good? Is it funny?
I haven't seen Big Brother, and this looks real creepy, so I don't know.
There's just a weird picture of an eye.
I don't know.
Mine will be better.
Okay.
It'll be a picture of two eyes.
There you go. Dan from Brute Force and Ignorance says, yep, my party attended the Greengrass Festival in Phandalin, complete with archery competition, pie eating, tests of strength, fortune tellers, merchants from far lands selling rare items, the mayor honoring them for their great work, all culminating in their home base being raided by a band of rogues whilst they were distracted.
Oh, no.
It went well, aside from the breaking and entry, obviously. We just got one over on Reddit. Timmy Soup says, I did actually as part of the reward for my group when we played the Lost Mines of Phandelver. It was my way of getting them to transition to Tribor as part of Storm King's Thunder. Basically, they were given tickets to the Festival of Ales as VIDs, very important drinkers, which their tickets included entry for the festival, tent accommodation for the night, as well as free drinks all afternoon prior to the evening competitions commencing. Tried making up a few games, including a drinking relay like the Boot Relay in Beer Fest, which basically they had to roll a d20 each time they took a drink and add their Constitution modifier. In the end, the team that won was the one with the highest total. As the day progressed, their con would go down based on the number of drinks they'd had. Different drink numbers affected different races differently. Over on Twitter, we just got 2 short ones. That's Carl with a K says, I tried, but my players were not really into it. So I attacked them with owlbears. So there you go.
Sometimes you just got to crash a party.
Yep. Margaret Scott said, Taxfest. Our cleric worshipped Abadar, god of cities and taxes. So we had a feast on April 15th. All the players brought special treats for the session. Our DM made us make tax checks. Those are intelligence checks. If we succeeded, we got a magic item. If we failed, a cursed item.
Oh, no.
So there you go.
Tax season festival.
Yep. And then over on Discord, I'll try to just grab a couple of these. The Beverage Tea says, as a player, I tried my best. My DM mentioned preparation for a festival. I asked which festival and received the answer of Dagger Days, which was sent in Daggerford and celebrated all things dagger.
Oh, it's kind of like Honda Days.
There you go.
Honda Days.
It's like Honda Days, but with daggers. You know.
Sure, it's exactly like that. So I tried to really get into it with my character, watching a brute bring in live targets for the dagger toss and perusing various stalls for daggery knickknacks and so on. My DM was not having it. The Chamberlain of Daggerford declared his disdain and disgust for the festival and rued the day that the Duchess had announced it. Our party then railroaded toward a more significant plot hook for the adventure.
That's fantastic.
Oh, no.
There you go. And then I'll just say one more. Our good friend Jason, he actually, I'm paraphrasing, but he mentioned the Challenge of Champions, which we did in the campaign a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was a group of dungeon magazine adventures where everybody comes together to go through like an obstacle course. And there's it's less about roles and more about like the players working out puzzles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I ran one of these, and that's when you guys had to put paper bags on your feet.
Right. Yeah. It was a puzzle
Sack
that
race?
involved.
Oh.
Well, so these are all puzzles, and I love to have physical props whenever possible. And this particular puzzle involved, there were a whole bunch of boots. 2 of them were magical boots of flying. The others were all identical, but there was no way to tell except putting them all on and then saying the magic word and hoping they worked. So the players had a time limit, and I just got paper bags and wrote like letters on the side, and they had to try on all the pairs and quickly shout out the command word and see if it worked.
Or wasn't it like there was a few command words that we had to try?
I think the command word, you could flip it upside down
and it read,
and it was a different word, so you had to try both.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And then, so that was last week's social media question. This week's social media discussion question is, and this isn't necessarily gaming related, but what is your favorite genre of books to read? So to the 2 of you, what is your favorite genre?
Boy, I mean, I guess I'll be boring and say currently it is fantasy.
Okay.
I like fantasy. I also like mystery. So I'm currently reading a book called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Oh, okay.
Which is a really cool murder mystery where it also involves time travel, where this guy has to solve a crime, and it's basically Groundhog's Day meets like Poirot, where it's like this guy keeps dying, and every day he wakes up in the body of a new host who was at a party and witnessed a murder.
Oh,
and he has to solve it by the time he gets to the 8th host that he inhabits. So it's a really cool thing playing with like perspective and time travel and what ripple effects you can cause every cycle. So I'm really obsessed with that book right now. And then, I also love like Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, any sort of fantasy book.
Okay. What was the name of that Groundhog's Day one again?
The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Okay.
I think the
put
author's name is like
show notes.
Stuart Turton or something. Stuart Turton.
Sure. I'll find it. That sounds really interesting. I might.
It's fantastic.
Check that out. Well, actually, let me ask you a question, Adel. Do you like high fantasy or low fantasy?
I enjoy high fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah. How would you distinguish low fantasy? What would you?
I mean, I think it's like how much magic there is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's basically how like.
So like, would Discworld be low fantasy and it's high fantasy? Okay.
Well, I don't know enough of Discworld. I'd say it's high fantasy because there is a lot of like. There's like the gods play a role and then death shows up and there's like all the wizards and stuff. Like,
is there a well-known series that would be a good example of low fantasy?
I would say something like Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
Because there is like magic and stuff involved, but it's like it's more about the politics than anything else.
Sure.
But yeah, I really enjoy, like, I'm currently in the middle of the Stormlight trilogy or Stormlight archives for Brandon Sanderson. And getting into like Mistborn, and that's definitely like there's a lot of magic and a lot of rules to that magic and everything about how it works and doesn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like some people would say like Lord of the Rings is more low fantasy too, just because it's like like again, it's like there's magic in the world, and it plays a key part in the setting, but not necessarily
the characters don't really have it.
Yeah, like none of I mean, one of the characters is a wizard, and there's only like 5 wizards in the world. Pippin, yes.
Pippin,
we all remember that Pippin owns house, right? Pippin the White.
Yep.
Oh, right, yeah, Pippin the White.
I would probably say, like, at least especially lately, I've been kind of on a modern fantasy kick. So probably modern fantasy. I also like mysteries. So like, a good murder mystery, I'm on board, whether it's fantasy or not.
Ooh, yeah. I just bought I guess not all, but I just bought like 64 paperbacks Agatha Christie because I've never read any of those.
Okay.
So I'm trying to collect them all. So I just bought a lot of those books. So I'm excited to dig into them.
Sure.
I have a horrible attention span, so I don't do a whole lot of reading myself, but I do enjoy fantasy fiction and like sci-fi and stuff like that. So
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Whoa. Yeah, like, and I mostly just like audiobooks and but
yeah,
a lot of like the few books that I've actually physically read, like I've gone back and listened to them through again and on audiobook and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know, I like rereading series. So like I've gone through Harry Potter a number of times ever since that came out. And
Jeff, you just feed pages into your stomach, right? And that constitutes reading it?
Right, yeah.
That's how that works.
You said your favorite book is 01100?
Right.
Yep.
It's a coding book or something. It's like $1 feeder at a
yeah, sometimes the page comes back out and you gotta fold the corners a little bit so they
gotta rub it up against the corner to flatten it out.
Yep.
Gabe, I feel like every episode from this point forward you should dedicate like a 30-second segment that's just a Turing test for Jeff.
We'll
like
see.
maybe we'll do that for one of our bonus episodes.
Before we go to a close here, Jeff, real quick, what is love?
Baby, don't hurt me. All right. Okay. Well, so that was the social media questions for this week. So that'll do it for our questions. But before we close out, let's wind down a little bit before we move on to the next segment. Let's relax. Let's remember those who have come before us. Let's remember those who have given their lives so that we may live in a better world, as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. So, Adel, you have a character death story. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think one of the most memorable deaths in our campaign, it was nobody in our party. We haven't had anybody in our party die. But we were facing off against someone who the DM later told me that this person was supposed to escape. Like, the plan was that it would be an ongoing battle that we'd keep meeting up. So basically this villain had a necklace of, it's like some sort of fire.
Necklace of fireballs?
Yes, so it's a necklace of fireballs. So basically,
I think I might see where this is going. Go on.
We were fighting them. They were a class way higher than us, so they're kind of whomping on us. And we got to a point where it's almost like a Mexican standoff, where the guy held up his necklace of fireballs and started to walk backwards, and he just said, like, "Let me go, or I'm going to blow us all up."
Yeah.
And as he slowly got further and further away, I had like a year previously bought an arrow that I forget the name of it, but it was basically like if I shoot it, it will not miss.
Okay.
It's like a surefire hit arrow. So I had 2 arrows. One that was never going to miss. We don't know how much damage it's going to do, but it will always hit its target. And I had another arrow that was, if it hits, which it may not, it deals maximum damage. So I pulled out the one that will always hit. Rush, our DM, was like, all right, he's obviously the guy who's holding the necklace of fire is getting antsy and might blow us all up. So be careful because you might kill the entire party. A little TPK. So the guy slowly backs away further and further and further. And finally, I say I let loose my arrow. And Rush said that his guy started to throw the necklace. And so it was a roll-off to see who got their shot off first. Mm-hmm. And I rolled a natural 20. So I caught the necklace in the air, pinned it to the guy's chest, and he exploded. And it basically dealt I think it was 500 and some points of damage. So he basically just became like dust in the wind.
Right.
And we narrowly, we got a little bit of heat scorched, but that's the worst of it. So that was definitely something where the entire party just cheered when I rolled that natural 20. And it was something where Rush was like, yeah, I planned on having that be a continued boss or villain throughout the whole series. But now it's someone who has been blown off the face of the earth.
That's pretty good.
Nothing guarantees the death of a villain more than the DM's plan to have it be a reoccurring villain.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, the thing about a necklace of fireballs, if that is what the item was, is that it's got all these. You've got a bunch of fireballs basically you can pull off and throw, but they can all go off.
Yeah.
At the same time while they're still on the necklace.
Right, yeah. So it's so many beads and each bead is a different level of fireball, but they can set each other off. So
But it was definitely
right.
It was definitely a thing of I got some sideways glances because if I would have rolled an 8 or something, we could have all been dead. So it was a gamble, and I was dumb enough to pull it off.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess let's. You sort of mentioned a song earlier, so let's raise a glass in memory of this. What was the bad guy's name?
Oh, I believe it was Boopaloop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's raise a glass in memory of Boopaloop, who was shot through the heart, and you're to blame. Clank. See, because he said dust in the wind, but I didn't know of an easy way to fit that into it.
They're very similar songs.
Yes.
Sure.
Both sung by Bon Jovi.
All right. Well, so that was that'll do it for our episode today. Adel, do you want to tell our listeners once more about yourself, about your where they can reach you, anything you're working on, whatever else you want to say before the end of the episode?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Check out the podcast Hello from the Magic Tavern, which is going to be improvised fantasy. It's really enjoyable. And Hey Riddle Riddle, which is me and 2 friends doing a podcast where we try and solve riddles and puzzles and do improv scenes along the way. It's a really good time. Check out our Patreon for Hey Riddle Riddle. And you can come see me if you're ever in Chicago. Come to IO Theater, and you can come see me in the show World News Tonight that plays every Saturday at 8 p.m. So come see a show, stick around afterwards, and say hi.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Adel. All right. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, on Reddit at r/interpartyconflict, on our Interparty Discord, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. There's a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel where we play video games.
Yes. And speaking of video games, check out my side project, the Arcade Memories podcast. If you'd like to submit your own childhood memories of going to the arcade, record them or write them to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show, what you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So Adel, until next time.
Jeff, describe a soul without using numbers.